Hey everybody, so this series is going to be a bit different from what I normally do. I decided that I wanted to make a series of videos that is centered around showing some fleets that could be fun anytime. Now something I want to say on this particular series is this. The fleets that I will be covering on this series may or may not be what people consider to be in the meta. Some of them may be pretty good in the overall game, others may be more designed as some fun away from the usual heavy grind. Some of these fleets could also be heavily reliant on manual play instead of auto. The bottom line here I'm trying to point out is whether or not you use these fleets is entirely up to you. This series is mostly to give people some ideas for fleets if they want to try something different or enjoy a nice twist to their game. Anyway, today's video will focus on the fleet that was coined from my stream chat as the Shipshank Redemption. Now for those of you that recall in Glowworm's video, I mentioned that I have a fleet that works around a ramming gimmick. So let's break down that fleet that I use. Now the Vanguard is for the most part set in stone. I do have an alternate setup that I can use, but this is my current main team for the time being. The Vanguard is Leipzig Retrofit, Glowworm, and Charles Osborne. The overall formation they should be in doesn't really matter outside of Leipzig being the frontrunner of the three. Now the reason I use this trio comes down to their overall skills. Let's talk about the leader, Leipzig. She may have 2 skills, but tactical command isn't really utilized heavily here. She is the only cruiser gaining anything from it, so it's only for her really. The main skill we're using here is her retrofit skill, Safety First, which will increase the overall speed of the Vanguard by 3 points and reduces damage taken from ramming by 25%. She'll also evade all attacks for up to 5 seconds and does up to 15% more damage once her health falls below 30%. The speed boost of this skill helps with overall movement and getting around relatively quickly. Taking less damage when ramming will help with this particular setup, as you will take considerable damage with this fleet. When her health does get low, you might find that ramming isn't going to be ignored, but she will still evade attacks from ships like torpedo and gunfire. Now her damage boost can help with clearing when things do get a little bit dicey for the fleet. Now the main focus of this fleet is still centered around Glowworm's gimmick skill, Meteor Slam, which will increase ramming damage dealt significantly while reducing ramming damage taken by a bit. I've covered Glowworm in depth already, so if you would like to know more, feel free to check it out in the description below. Glowworm also has the skill Emergency Maneuvers, but that won't really apply too much here considering we'll be ramming mostly. Last but not least is Charles Osborne. Charles also has 2 skills, but full firepower isn't the main focus here as well. Charles' main skill that we're going to be working with is her skill 31 Knot Burk, which gives her a small chance when firing her main gun to increase the speed and evasion of the Vanguard by a decent amount. This combined with Glowworm allows for some hilariously high speed ramming, while at the same time, Glowworm and Leipzig help to do some form of damage control. Now the only substitution I do have is Ayanami. Ayanami can replace Leipzig if you're wanting to take advantage of the close quarters and face torpedo something with Ayanami's high torpedo damage. The only downside is that she may struggle with surviving due to a lower health pool, much like Charles and Glowworm. See, one of the nicest things about this Vanguard is the fact that all of them are available in the base game. Charles and Glowworm are available via light build and some map drops. Ayanami is attained by max limit breaking each of the starter destroyers, and Leipzig is obtained by limit breaking Karls, Köln, and Königsberg enough to obtain 9 stars. One last thing to note, the auxiliaries I use in this Vanguard are all boilers, because you want to be fast AF. Boy. Seriously though, the speed boost will help them even more and is hilarious when combined with Charles' skill. You can use health kits if you feel health is an issue. I can't blame you, we aren't using destroyers after all. However, I would also say that the Beaver Badge can also be used. I usually give the Beaver Badge to a backliner to max out the speed boost of the boilers. However, I guess you could put it on a Vanguard member if you prefer to have it there. Just note that the evasion won't be of much use against ramming damage. Now, as much as I do want to make a whole joke request about having San Diego in here, with her retrofit, she'd probably annihilate everything before you even got the chance to even ram it. So, unfortunately, I'm gonna say no to her on this one. Now the backline allows for a lot more flexibility, so you can use who you feel can satisfy this role best. One of the biggest things to worry about with this particular fleet is the health of your Vanguard. We may deal a lot of damage when ramming, but we are also still taking damage ourselves. We can control it a bit with Leipzig and Glowworm, but healing will definitely help to prevent this even more. Now we do have a variety of healers available for this particular role. The best one that I like to use right now is Ryuho. Her unique healing skill can allow for her to not only heal the Vanguard for a considerable amount, but also to help keep your backline healed as well. If you equip her with auxiliaries that boost her max health, her healing can be pretty significant to your frontline, especially destroyers if you're working with a full destroyer group. Now, she does have an additional skill that works around submarines, but in most cases you will probably not be relying on your subfleet or really dealing with enemy submarines to begin with. Now, I usually rely on 2 healers to make sure there's enough healing to keep the Vanguard alive. At this point, I'd either rely on Unicorn or Shoalhole for this. Unicorn can help with taking care of plane threats alongside Ryuhole, but may not have a lot of ship damage. But bottom line is, if damage output is a concern, Shoalhole can do a decent amount due to how she's designed. Now, if you don't have Ryuhole, you can work with both Unicorn and Shoalhole, as they'll give the best healing out of all the ships. Now, if you're not confident enough, you could rely on a 3rd healer, and at that point I would suggest Arizona. As much as I do prefer to not have healing based on RNG, Arizona has the ability to defend the backline. While she may not be the best at it, she can still stop some attacks to the backline. Of course, if you're not worried, then getting a strong defensive battleship could be beneficial for the final slot. There are quite a bit of good candidates for this role. Yuga Retrofit can help out a lot with her defensive barrage, Bismarck's War Height can allow her to provide a supporting fire due to her range buff, and there's also War Corgi Kai. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of good candidates for these rules. Feel free to experiment with what you would like. So the real question now comes down to, is this fleet meta-defining? It would be hilarious if it was. Sadly, this fleet is more of a meme gimmick fleet than a practical or meta-based one. This fleet is more for giving people a good laugh while playing. I honestly love using it at my fireboat daily and seeing how many boats I can prevent from reaching the left side. I have used it in missions before, but mostly in areas where I do have a decent level advantage. Its main pro is in the hilarity of the fleet itself and the fact that you can get away with this particular type of fleet. Now, there are some major cons to this fleet, which is explaining why it's not meta. First off, ramming is a double-edged sword. While you dish out damage ramming, you're also taking damage while doing so. Not to mention the slow debuff both parties get isn't exactly that great either. In reality, you'd want to avoid damage as much as possible, which is generally why ramming is the last thing to ever be considered. Speaking of damage, outside of ramming, you might not be able to get a lot of damage out of the ships normally. Your backliners may be having to work overtime to accommodate for the team in terms of both airplane and ship damage. Lastly, while this isn't all golds or PR ships, it is a full fleet, so the oil cost might be something you have to be willing to use up. As mentioned before, whether you use this fleet is entirely up to you. It's certainly a really hilarious team to use, and it does make for a good breakaway from the usual grinding and allows for some pretty silly shenanigans. If you do use this fleet in main story missions, just be advised that they may not be stellar in that environment. Anyway, that's going to be it for this particular fleet video. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you would like to see more of these types of videos, feel free to let me know. I do have several other formations I like using from time to time, and I've also named them. This is one of the many ideas I did have for other videos that I can do for Azur Lane. Now, I will also say that if anyone does have any interesting fleet setups that they would like me to give a try out, then feel free to let me know. I'm actually kind of curious if anyone has any clever designs set up for them. But anyway, hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I will see you guys in the next live stream or video that I do. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all again real soon.